I think this thing is working. I think we are live. Are we live? I believe we are live. Looks like we're on. What's happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic Saturday. If you're watching this on Saturday, then chances are your Saturday did not quite go as well as you had hoped. Basically, we're doing an open chat this evening. Got a lot kind of to get to, and there's so many different things that I would want to talk about that they'll probably all just end up coming up in this chat anyway. So this is kind of going to be a little bit more of the, how do I put this? Kind of the late night variety. By the way, it is muggy as hell down here in beautiful H-Town, Texas. And this air conditioner better start working because I'm getting a little sticky. Anyway, been watching different YouTubers lately. And what I've noticed is a lot of people straight blowing their shit up. And one of the things that I have been a big proponent of is try to exercise a little bit of moderation when you're modding your cars. I get so many questions on every aspect of modding. It could be, I don't know, it could be cams, cylinder heads, intakes, blowers, headers, tuning, you name it. But the funniest thing about all of the I don't know, the different topics that I've gone over, one thing never really has come up, and that is, what do you do if the worst scenario seems to happen? In other words, if you have modded your car and you scatter this thing, what then? Well, if you've got plenty of money in the bank, then it's no big deal. I mean, you basically just can money away that problem, right? But most guys don't have that luxury. In fact, I would say the vast majority of people don't have that luxury. So when I'm saying to exercise a little bit of prudence when you're putting one of these cars together, just know that it comes from a place of experience. Chuck's in. What's up, Chuck? Kobe's in. I'm trying to save you from yourself, so to speak. And more to the point, I'm trying to save you from the marketing bullshit that you have been force-fed leading you into the shop to get your car modified. See, there's a big misconception out there, and that is that modifying your car is perfectly safe, and that if you take your car to a shop and you modify it, or they modify it, and then your car blows up, that the shop is somehow responsible for that. That your tuner is somehow responsible for that. The reality is that the minute you want to, how do I put this? The minute you want to start to significantly modify your car, you should know coming into this, and the shop owner or the service advisor, shop manager, whomever you're talking to, should tell you straight up, you are now taking your car away from a reliable state. If you're going to be beating on this thing mercilessly and it's stock, you can still blow it up. In fact, I have seen bone stock cars let go on the dyno. Think about that for a minute. A bone stock car, never touched it, stock tune, stock everything. You put it on the dyno because you want to catch a little bit of a video for your Instagram or whatever. You put that thing on the dyno, go to watt, and it lets all the smoke out of the engine. What? Yeah, that happens to happen. So that's why there are waivers that you sign. That's why there are things that you are supposed to be told by the shop, if they're being responsible, to let you know what you're getting yourself into. Anytime you start to modify the car, whether it is tuning, minor modifications, cold air kits, could be anything, you are removing reliability, not adding reliability to your car. Rarely are you adding reliability to your platform. And when I say rarely, one of the cars that you actually are, if you modify it or if you tune it properly, adding reliability is the Hellcat platform. If you've ever seen the tune of a stock Hellcat and you have any understanding of how tuning and fuel air ratios work in the real world with gasoline and all of that, you would be like, what the, I mean, it's almost like it's it's scary how lean the thing is given the amount of power that it's making. So anyway, and that's from the factory. So anyway, I guess where I'm going is this. You might be watching these guys that are throwing all this money at their cars, and they're going out and, you know, it's talking a bunch of shit and haha, look at what I can do. Look at what I can do. Man, my car is fast. Look at you. Fuck you. Boom. And the shit blows up. And it's, the car blew up. I'm so sad. Woe is me, motherfucker. I am so sick, I guess, is what I'm getting at, of these televised, seemingly, because it's on YouTube, but it's like this, I don't know. I feel like it's a telethon almost. You know, look, man, I was doing all this and now the car blew up and I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to lose the shop, man. That's the idea that you get. It is so annoying listening to it. But you know what? None of that shit would have happened if you had bought a Tesla Plaid, right? You can't blow up something that doesn't have blowing up parts in it, right? And you can't send pistons through the side of a block that, well, if you don't have pistons, can't float a valve if you don't have valves, and you can't bend a push rod if it doesn't have push rods. I guess the point of it is this. I see all the money being spent. I see all the revenue being generated. And the second that car blows up, everybody's talking about it. Ooh, did you hear about so-and-so or this guy? Or did you hear about that? Or what about that? Or what about that guy? You hear about it. At least you're starting to hear about it now, because what was happening before, and this is kind of a pet peeve of mine, is that guys would take a stock Mustang, for example, and throw a ton of power at it, and you would see it, and then you wouldn't see it for a little bit. And then you'd see it again, and it's faster. Ooh, that's really cool. Still stock motor, but then you don't see it anymore. And you see it again, and it's super fast, but still stock motor. What you're failing to be told is that is the third stock engine that car has seen, probably the second or third transmission. There was never any backstory on a lot of those cars. And this was earlier on. This isn't in recent memory. So at least you're hearing about the failures. But the problem is that the failures are also there to generate income. It's there to generate clicks. It's almost like the failures make you more money as a YouTuber than getting to the point of failure, right? So anyway, just some of the curiosities that I've seen. And the reason why I even bring it up is because I'm just curious how many people base their builds and base their purchases off of those builds that they're seeing, and not understanding and realizing that, and this is the point that I'm trying to get to, not understanding and realizing that these people have gone through tens of thousands of dollars in modifications, and more to the point, tens of thousands of dollars in repairs just to keep that vehicle in front of the screen. Because if that vehicle is in front of the screen, you ain't cutting that paper, baby. So I'm just curious as to that. And another reason why I bring this up is recently, I've seen more what you would consider a mild, I don't even call them mild builds anymore because none of them are mild. Significant build, but nothing way over the top. I've seen some of those cars breaking down. I've seen some of those cars failing for whatever reason. It could be a Hellcat platform, which could be Hellcat Demon Red Eye, could be a Mustang platform, could be an LS LT platform. Not calling out any specific manufacturer, any specific car in general. But I've been seeing a lot more failures lately. And it's weird because we're not in blown up, boosted car territory right now. We're more in, the weather's just barely starting to change, but not really changing enough to matter, especially down here in Texas. I mean, it's not even, it doesn't get cool down here until after, I almost said Thanksgiving, but until after Halloween. So, or at least it starts cooling down around there, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. And it's kind of weird, just the number of cars I've started to see fail. And I just wonder how many of those guys would have maybe not spent the money and put themselves into a situation financially because they want to be that guy, right? They want to be that hell of a fella that's on YouTube with this car that goes nines, but they don't understand everything that happened behind the scenes to get that thing to run nines. Anyway, just curious, running my mouth a little bit, but let me check in with you guys real quick, see if there's any questions you guys might have. Let's see. It said, what's up to Chuck and Kobe? Kobe's saying, how reliable can a 9-second car be? Very reliable. To be honest with you, a Bravo package Hellcat, you can daily drive the thing indefinitely, provided that you keep fuel pumps alive in the thing, only because E85 will start to eat up those components. But if you do, instead of having a true 9-second car, which a Bravo package will be a 9-second car regardless of weather, if you say a car that can run nines or does run nines in cool weather and boost weather, you can have a 93 octane tune 285 upper car that will in fact run into the nines, not just like a 990, but 980, 970, and not have any issues doing it, provided that you're on really good pump gas and maybe hit it with some butane or a race gas mix if you're going to be beating on it. Sovereign Zen, what's up? Jerry Zen. Oh, goodness. Doing this from the computer. It's a little bit easier, actually, to do this from the computer than this from the phone. Let's see. Mark's saying, hey, Mason, in the passenger seat of my friend's Camaro, leaving the drag strip for the first time, headed back home. Very cool. That was fun as hell. Next time I'm bringing my RT, always bring the RT. You will have fun. Just practice, 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 man. That's the most important thing you can do. Seat time, practice, driver mod. That is so important. Multiple Mopars is in. We are hanging out in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I like it. Man, I like Bowling Green. It's been a while since I've been there. Jerry1320 saying, I just got some ET Street R's. Shop said they couldn't balance because they have a flat spot on the tires. You can see it. It runs diagonally across. Oh, he's asking if I've ever seen any issues with tires like that in the past. Yes and no. So I've seen tires that have sat and they were sitting upright and they were not inflated. It was just the tire and they cupped, and that can cause an issue. I've seen where guys have put the tires on the rim, filled them up with, in this case, like an ET Street R, like 30 pounds of air, and just drove it. A lot of times, and don't drive it a lot, but if you just drive it, sometimes that flat spot, you can kind of, in essence, machine the flat spot out of it. The running joke with the old Nitto Tri-5s was that they flat spotted the minute you parked the car. I mean, my old Lightning, I'd drive it and it's, until everything warmed up and rounded out. If it's really bad, though, they're just rejects and they got to go back. And I have heard some people talking that the Mickey Thompson ET Street R's have had some issues. You might just have a bad batch. You may need to send them back and get a replacement set. So, let's see. Would it be better to send it back? Probably. Chuck say mid muffler delete and pedal commander is all I've done so far. Man, that's a good start. Let's see. Someone was saying I have an 08 Charger SRT8 and I want to do a 370 gear. How would I do that since the axles are smaller and I can't swap the whole manual rear end? You should be able to get a 373 out of an 08. It's going to be a Gatrag rear end, and that should work. The manual 18-inch cars had 3.9 gears, and the 20-inch cars had 392 gears. The 18-inch wheel cars had 370 gears. So for the 08, you'd have to go with the Gatrag housing. Yeah, and you're right. The HP will not work. I know that there's guys that have done that, and actually DSS sells drive shafts with yokes for guys that wanted to put a Gatrag unit in an HP car or vice versa. They should be able to work with you on that. At least they used to. 19RS3 is asking, is it a better option getting a 22 Charger Red Eye stock or a 22 Hellcat Charger and drop $3,000 in mods with pulleys, tune injectors, and 750 wheel horsepower? I'm trying to understand the question. Is it better? Is it a better option getting a 22 Charger red eye? Oh, I see. I think I see what you're trying to say. Okay, a red eye Charger and leaving it stock versus a Hellcat and putting money into it. Well, 750 wheel horsepower, I'll be real honest with you, buddy. It ain't going to feel that much different. It will, but it won't. On a drag strip, you'll see the difference. In fact, if you want to know what the difference is, just look at the latest ride-along video. I've been trying to do this for you guys, too, a little bit more, where the ride-along videos, I'm trying to pair up with a faster car than me. The reason why is that I want you guys to be able to see the difference between my car and, like, say, Nate's Plum Crazy red eye, which is a legit mid 9-second car in cold weather. That thing is a 10.0 car in its worst scenario and will normally run 970, 980. Or Robert's car, which Roxanne will typically run. That's the last one that I ran. That car will typically run, say, 10.0s, okay? 10.0s, 10 teens, whereas my car is a 1050 car in the same conditions. It's to illustrate the difference for what a half a second can look like. And if you look at that video that I posted, that's actually what 0.6 of a second will show, because my ass was sitting at the starting line waiting on my freaking bread to finish toasting so I could finish making my ham sandwich and then go ahead and take off. I gave up 1/10 of a second on the launch, and normally I don't play on the light, but I'm just watching the pretty lights flicker down, just la, 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 la. I don't know. I was just, anyway, long story short, that's what was up with that pass. But it's cool so that you guys can see the difference. And for folks that don't understand what the difference is between a half of a second or 3/4 of a second in the quarter mile, when you see that car just buzzing past, that's the difference. It is a huge difference. And it's fun to actually be able to show that. And, you know, showing me beating another car, it doesn't prove anything. And it doesn't illustrate anything other than, okay, I beat a slower car. Chandelier's fast. And that's the other thing, is that Chandelier is really a fast car, a mid 10-second car in the heat. It's a damn fast car. By the way, it's also fun to show how long I will hold off a faster car. And a lot of times, especially if I'm cutting a light, if I'm on the throttle, I'll hold off a significantly faster car through the 8th mile. It's only after the 8th mile that they start to freight train. So, you know, but that makes sense. When you put more money, more modifications, more time and effort, you're going to have a faster car. But what's the limit? That's for you to decide. And quite honestly, the limit is based around what fuel do you want to run. I am trying to figure out, by the way, speaking of fuel, I'm trying to figure out a way to do a screenshot of the Excel spreadsheet that I made, that I did all the calculations on, and kind of made it to where I could show equivalent compression ratios to show why E85 works in some cases and doesn't work in others. I may actually have to figure out how to work some editing software or something. Anyway, I'm working on that, but your performance level will always be dictated by the fuel that you run. Nowadays, it is irrelevant what parts you put on the car. All of these packages are going to make a lot of power, provided you use the right fuel, and they'll be very limited, although not slow. You'll just be limited in your capacity if you choose to run pump gas like what I'm doing. Let's see. Oh, Kobe's saying, I just want a reliable 10-second car that I can drive every day. Bone stock Hellcat, bone stock Red Eye, bone stock GT 500. All three of those cars are legit 10-second cars on a tire that you could drive every day. I know a lot of guys that drove Hellcat Chargers as their dailies. We had several that were well over 100,000 miles at the shop. So if you want a reliable 10-second car, if you want something that is like Anvil reliable as a 10-second car that you can drive every day, that is actually arguably, well, I mean, it's kind of practical. Pick you up a Hellcat or a Red Eye Charger, guaranteed to run 10s on a tire, and you can carry 4 people around in it. So Callus is, Mr. Blacktop saying, what up? What's up, man? Callus saying, seems like most popular YouTubers are just using the income to buy more upgrades and or cars. A lot of them are. That's what they do, though, for a living. I mean, if they're not buying parts for their cars, or if they're not buying new cars, then they don't have any other way to interact with folks, so to speak. So that's their job, is literally to buy cars, modify them, and either blow them up and fix them up and do it again and again and again. If that's what their audience wants, it's their job to deliver on that. Let's see. Callus is asking, have you ever used the flat tire air pump on a Hellcat? Does it really work? Yeah, it works really well. Mopar is saying, I think the failures generate more views, and that's part of the adventure to people. It is. That said, they better for sure know the consequences of a stock short block build. So that's really the point of it, is stock short block. Okay. Again, I always go back to the LS mentality with that. It's a stock short block. You build it and you blow it up, and you go to the junkyard, you get another LS and you build it and blow it up. It's not quite that easy. And it's not quite that cheap, by the way. You might think that it is. You may have been led to believe that it is. It's not. Now, that being said, if you get a stock 5.3, for example, pull that thing apart, put some ring gap in it, slap it back together, it will absolutely carry power for a long time, just like every other engine will. Doesn't matter if it's a Hemi, an LS, a Coyote, a Windsor block, SBC, it doesn't matter. You pull it apart, put ring gap in it, hit it with boost and good fueling, and it will actually last pretty long time. Right up until the point where it blows up, just like all of them do at some point, because they're a stock build. That's what they're going to do. And that's been the running joke. Everybody's, it was at one point, LS are so cheap because when you blow them up, you can just go get a new one. Think of that mentality. It's like you're literally planning for catastrophic failure by this build, by simply putting this build together. Anyway, I always thought that was funny. Talk about the pain in the ass factor is just level 10 with that. Scat Pack saying, I run bias ply tires on my Scat Pack. Is it likely I break anything if I switch to a radial? No, it's less likely that you would break something if you switch to a radial. Plus, it'll be more stable at high speeds. I have found that with the bias plies on these cars, guys, these cars are pretty heavy to be running bias plies, and they're independent rear suspension cars, which means that because there's nothing really tying the tire and forcing the tire to stay flat, you're asking a bias ply tire to be dealing with camber changes in the rear, which means that it's an uneven footprint, which is to say that you're inherently unstable because it's a bias ply. And now you're side loading the tire, basically, which is going to make the thing even more unstable. If I ran bias plies on the Vipers and I ran bias plies on my Z06, I know what the bias ply, the bias ply shuffle at the end of the track. And you're driving the car, and this is the feeling that you get. And this actually, this pitch is not at all exaggerating. I mean, the car will actually shimmy going down the track, and that's just the way that bias plies can work. In a big, heavy car, that's a lot of actual mass moving. I'll never forget Racer X taking excessive down the track. It was this was in Dallas. And that car, man, that thing was scary looking at the big end of the track. You learn, to drive through it when you're experienced with this stuff. The first time it happens, you will white knuckle. You will freak out. Everybody does. I don't care who you are. You might think you got ice water flowing through your veins and you're just Billy Badass, but at about 110 miles an hour, when that thing starts to shimmy a little bit, some guys will panic and they'll start trying to overcorrect, and that's when shit just gets weird. So I always, especially nowadays with the weight of the cars, the speed of the cars too is significantly higher. Always looking at, for the street cars, but the full weight stuff especially, always run radials. They're easy to get your hands on, easy enough anyway. But more to the point, they're going to be a lot more stable. Some people will argue about weight. Really? Get the tire that's appropriate for your car. And again, these Mopars are heavy, so you want as much as you can get. Jerry, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. I don't see a question, but thank you very much for the contribution, my friend. Let's see. Mr. Blacktop's asking, is the reason that we are seeing so many failures because people are modding their cars before they fully get to know the car as far as when it's stock? Well, not necessarily. I think the reason why you're seeing so many more failures now is because people are having to modify their cars more just to get a reaction. Think of it like this. Modern cars are so fast as it sits. There's nothing new or fresh about a 9-second car. And more to the point, a 9-second street car. There's nothing new or fresh about a car that can go from 60 to 130 in 7 seconds flat. I mean, that's old news at this point. It's fast as hell, but it's old news. You know, we're talking, you know, cars that are doing this in the, you know, mid to low 5s, in some cases in the high 4s, talking about 60 to 130. And these are legit street cars, at least H-Town legit street cars, right? But the thing is you got to keep stacking and stacking and stacking power to get any kind of reaction and to get any kind of momentum going for your channel, so to speak. So why are they blowing them up more? Man, they're just forcing them to make more power. I'll be real honest with you. I don't trust any build that's sitting over 1,000 horsepower at the flywheel. And the reason why I don't trust it is because I don't trust fuel quality. E85 can get a little bit questionable. And obviously you wouldn't be near that high on 93 octane, at least not with any of the platforms, the more commonly recognizable platforms that are out there. So again, you're looking to E85 for this type of power capability. And it's not just the fuel. See, one of the issues that you run into with the E85 is that it eats everything. If it's made out of metal, E85 is going to try to figure out a way to eat it alive. It's only a matter of time. And typically that matter of time may only be a couple of years if you're not running gasoline through it to flush it out periodically. Some components last for a much longer period of time, but a lot of them do not. So it's real important that you take that into consideration as well when you start to potentially see failures with fuel pumps. I have seen this with cars that sit for a long period of time with old E85 in the tank. It's weird. E85 is a different monster. If you are running the pumps all the time, if you're driving the vehicle a lot, you're keeping the thing exercised, so to speak, those vehicles have far fewer issues, if any, than cars that are let to sit. If you let that stuff sit, it starts to absorb moisture. That moisture, along with the E85, starts to corrode things. Plus, the fuel can come out of suspension, creates all kinds of other issues. And so, yeah, you can start to run into problems with the E85 that you would never have problems with gasoline or race gas or, you know, that type of a fuel derivative. The point that I'm making is that a lot of the failures come from fuel components failing. Could be an injector failing. Usually it's a pump failing or other associated parts that are failing. Could be fuel pressure sensor or other things like that that can go downhill because that E85 is eating them up. And again, it's because the cars just aren't being driven. So just a word to the wise on that. If you're running a car on E85, make sure you are running the car on E85 regularly. Or if you've got a 93 octane tune, get as much of that E85 out, run a couple of tanks of 93 octane through it, then run a couple of tanks of E85 through it after that. Let's see. I think I bumped my deal here. Okay. Let's see. Blacktop's hanging out with Multi. Let's see. Callus is saying, he's hanging out with 93 RS3. Lux 60's asking, B, what did your car run in the quarter before you did anything to it? It ran 1080s and high 1070s. Basically, it was your typical run-of-the-mill 2015 Hellcat. Although it was a little bit quicker than normal. Most of the Hellcats that I've driven bone stock when I baselined them, depending on the weather, in good weather, you would see an 11.0 to an 1090 for a lot of those. The first time I ever took my car to the track, my first hit, it went 11 flat and it spun, which I thought was adorable. And then it went low 1090s, high 1080s after that. So with a little bit better air and with shallow staging, I got a couple of 1070s out of it. And then from there, I started tuning it, and the rest is history. But yeah, that car always ran really good. Oh, with a stock unopened, uncracked ECU, a 309 gear, and a drag pack, the car went a 1037. When a 1037, again, unopened, untouched ECU, but I was running a 100 octane mix. And that was good enough for like a third place. Or no, that was on 93. That was for a period of time I was doing testing with 100 octane and 93 octane. Anyway, long story short, was that on 100 octane? I think it went a 33 on 100 octane, 37 on 93, which is kind of within the noise. Can't really split that. In other words, 100 octane may or may not have helped it. But I do know that at that point in time, it was good enough, at least as far as the forums were concerned, the time slips were concerned. I think that was third place for third fastest uncracked ECU. This is where all the micro records start to just blow them out of the ground. But anyway, just kind of give you an idea. That's kind of the range that it ran. That was in really crazy air, though, so I wouldn't really go around claiming that. Outside of that, it would have been like a 10, like a high 1070, low 1080. Chuck's asking, I'm fine with making my RT shaker into an 11-second car. I just hope it stays reliable after Pro Charger headers and a cam. Man, you're getting a long way away from reliable with a Pro Charger. The headers are fine. Headers aren't going to hurt anything. Cam really shouldn't hurt anything. It's just the Pro Charger thing. You want to talk about needing really good fuel to make that work. Keep the boost low. Mild cam is all you need. Don't get greedy, and you should be good. You should be fine. Adam's asking, is E85 really needed? Yeah, it is. It depends on the level that you want your car to get to. If you want your car, doesn't matter if it's Mustang, Camaro, Hellcat, 392, 5, it doesn't matter. If you want your car to make more than 685 horsepower to the rear wheels, you're going to need a different kind of fuel. If it's a LX platform, they're just too heavy. If you want to get a Mustang to go any faster than, or make any more power than, say, I don't know, about the same-ish power, you're going to need a different fuel. You can get away with more with the Mustang because the Mustang, the Coyote engine, is making a lighter vehicle go down the track. you might want to dial back a truck, in other words. But the reality is the 685 horse number, that power level, it's pretty much the same across the board. Some guys will say 650, other guys will say 750. Depends on the dyno. All right. So if you're on a Mustang dyno, a true eddy current dyno that's not in the business of making anybody happy based on the number that it gives, I'd say 650 to 700 is about as high as you want to go on pump gas. If you're on a dyno jet, I would say 750 would be about as high as I would go on pump gas. After that, you're really pushing the limits of what 93 octane can manage in terms of NOx sensitivity. And the problem is that at that power level, let me reset that. The good thing is that at that power level, you are now at an equivalent compression ratio to where you can start to take advantage of a better fuel like E85. And it's going to start to make a significant difference. You can really start to run more timing. You're already going to be running a lot more fuel mass. You're going to have some more downstream charge cooling effect with it. So you can start to take advantage of it at that point. But the reality is, until you get to that point, here's the kind of the weird thing about it is, until you get to that point, E85 really won't do you much good anyway, because you can't run any more timing to take advantage of, well, whatever combination that you have, because you've kind of crested this timing plateau. And what that means basically is that any platform, any combination has a timing that it's going to make the most power at that moment in those atmospheric conditions. From there, you may have a window of 1 or 2 degrees on either side of that where you're going to either see power drop off, or you're going to have power drop off because it's too advanced in general, but it won't have pre-ignition. And you will be basically just over-timed. So if you brought your timing back, you may not lose any power. You may pick up a little bit of power by bringing it back. That just means that you've exceeded the requirements of the engine, but not the requirements of the fuel. That's the beauty of E85, is that for a lot of cars and a lot of combinations, you can overtime the engine and then drag timing back, and there's no worry about pre-ignition. So anyway, E85 is a great thing, provided that your E85 quality is good. Let's see. Sovereign saying, be kind to your oil, say no to E85 oil contamination. If you're running E85, don't forget. I mean, that's part of the E85 protocol that I would tell everybody. Your new oil change intervals just got cut in half, and you're supposed to be changing it in no more than 5,500 miles realistically. You're now going to be changing it at the latest at 3 to maybe 3,500 miles, but don't let it get to 4. Sorry, I just saw this one roll across. Nom nom nom, says the corn fuel. Very true. Scat Bag G saying, a shop down here recommended long tube headers on my buddy's 392 Jeep, but said the Chargers and Challengers don't need them as much. The Jeep manifold may be a little bit different. In fact, if I remember correctly, it kind of is. Look, you don't need them for either one of those combinations. So I wouldn't really rest my head on needing them for a Jeep and not needing them for an LX platform. Where the long tubes help is they develop bottom end torque. There's a big misconception about long tube headers that they make top end horsepower. It couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, I've seen cars lose top end horsepower, but gain power all throughout the rest of the power curve. So, to lose 3 horsepower at 6,200 RPM, but gain, say, 10 pound-feet of torque for a significant portion of the curve, and then have that gain slowly drop as you increase RPM, it's a decent enough trade-off, and a lot of guys will take it. The Jeep may do well with them, mainly because it's just a heavy-ass Jeep. Downside to it, though, is you got to have a tune because long tubes will absolutely piss off knock sensors. So know that coming into it. If you plan on putting any kind of header on these cars, you have to have a tune ready to go, or your knock sensors are going to go batshit crazy, and you're going to start yanking timing all over the place. True for any of these new cars with knock sensors. Aside from the fact you have to get your transfer function sorted, but that's a different story. Let's see. Kobe's asking if you have to change your oil more often than E85. Yes, you do. The answer, the reason why that is ethanol has a lower molecular weight than gasoline. What that is to say is that if I have this Pepsi bottle full of ethanol and I have this Pepsi bottle full of gasoline, this Pepsi bottle with ethanol will simply weigh less for the same amount of volume. That is to say that the molecule is smaller. That is to say that that molecule can pass past rings more easily. You always have some ring wash, whether it's gasoline or ethanol, whatever. That's just the part of combustion. And the fact that you're compressing something, there's only so much the rings can hold in. It's how much do they hold in? Well, in this case, the idea with gasoline is that, number one, it's a hydrocarbon. So therefore, it has a level of lubricity to it anyway. But normally, the gasoline will evaporate out and you'll be fine. The difference is that over a certain amount of time of driving, by the way, and this is wide open throttle hits, right? The difference with ethanol is that when you hit the throttle with ethanol, you have significantly more fuel mass going into the cylinder, 30% more than gasoline. And yes, that does, in a way, artificially raise your compression ratio for you more astute guys thinking about that. But with the higher fuel mass, it's by a tiny amount, but the higher fuel mass means that you have more mass that can now get past the rings. Ethanol has a fairly high volatility rate, means it does evaporate pretty quickly. But the big issue is if you're making a bunch of wide open throttle hits and then you shut the car off, that ethanol stays in the oil. It doesn't have a chance to evaporate out. So, a lot of start, stop, moving, driving, things like that. If you're trying to daily a car on ethanol, you just have to know that you're going to have to change your oil more often due to oil contamination. It's the reality of having one of these things. Scat Pack G, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Very kind of you, buddy. Don't have a question, but thank you very much. Hopefully I answered a question if it was posted earlier. Let's see. Ashley Mills, what's up, girl? What are you doing? Asking, are you going to race at Lone Star Mopar Fest? Probably not. I'm going to try to go. I want to be able to see everybody, but Sovereign Knight 5 for the live. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. But no, I doubt that I'll be competing. I have run in Mopar Fest before, but they're all bracket races, and it's not like there's an index. I don't think there might be a heads up index, which could have been fun, but I just would rather be out there running my car, and I don't want to be in a situation where I've got to pedal the car to run a number or something like that. It doesn't really appeal to me all that much, but it'll be cool to see everybody. So if you're going, I will probably see you. I'm thinking I'll be there anyway. And thank you, Sovereign. I appreciate that. And you too, Scat Pack. Ashley's also asking if I will be at Cletus and Cars. I will not be able to make it to Cletus and Cars, unfortunately. I would like to. I just cannot make it. I'm hoping to go to Mopar Fest, though. And, I mean, it'd be great if they actually had – and thank you again, Jerry. I, too, appreciate that, brother. I would love to be able to participate in some level, but chances are I'll just be data logging cars and going over data logs and hopefully helping folks out if they need help with that. That's usually what I'll do at those events. Let's see. Oh, I blew past everybody. What the hell did I do? Sovereign's hanging out with Kobe. Let's see. Alden saying, I'm looking to get a Scat Pack, but with the car market, should I bite the bullet or wait? I would wait right now. Lots of a lot less room to negotiate right now. It seems anyway. Unless you just get a smoking deal, somebody's just wanting to get rid of their car, or if a dealership's willing to play ball with something that they have in stock. Catalyst, thank you very much. Saying, folks that put turbos on a Hellcat, do they have to remove the supercharger or the turbos run along with it? Totally depends on what they're up to and what they're wanting to do with the car. The majority of the guys do not run a compound system, which is to say they do not feed the supercharger. They will feed a Holly, the sniper type of intake. The reason for that is heat. It's really hard to mitigate heat when you've got a compound system. And the idea is that, and this is where terminology comes into play. So people talk about intercooling. There are very few cars that actually have an intercooler. You have an aftercooler. The reason why it's an aftercooler is because after the supercharger, it then feeds the intake manifold, and then it goes into the cylinders, and then it makes bang and go boom and tire smoke and smiles, right? In the case of a compound system, you do have an intercooler. It is an intermediate cooler to cool the charge of your turbos before they go into your supercharger. And the idea is to try to drag as much heat out of that so that your air charge is as dense as you can get it going into your supercharger. The reason for that is because the supercharger is an atmo pressure multiplier. It's got a pressure ratio, meaning it doesn't matter what pressure you put into the supercharger, it will make more pressure on the bottom side of that. So if the supercharger is pulleyed on the car to make 8 pounds of boost, 10 pounds of boost, just pick a number, it doesn't matter. Let's say it's 10 pounds of boost. And that is at normal atmospheric pressure. Then when you feed it boost with a set of turbos, and the turbos could be at, 5 pounds of boost. And the supercharger is trying to cram 8 pounds of boost into the car. It's not 8 plus 5. It's not 13. It might end up being 17 pounds of boost. And again, the reason for that is the pressure ratio of that supercharger is going to compress whatever atmosphere it sees into the area that it is compressing it into. So as you may imagine, the turbo, if you don't have an intercooler, will have a higher temperature, but it'll also have higher boost. What a lot of people don't understand, and it's hard to, it makes sense. And I could do this visually. I could show you this visually if I just had a balloon, because I've got the dump freezer behind me. Found that freezer at the dump. Thing works like a freaking beast. Anyway, if you have higher discharge temperature, you have higher boost. And the reason for that is that every time that supercharger turns, M&Ms can you fit in a jar, right? Well, the same applies to how many packages of air can I fit into a finite space, which is your cylinder. So if I have cooler air, I can just simply get more packages of air in there. It's the way you can think about it to kind of help make sense of it. At least that's the way I learned how to think about it. So again, you can show a higher boost number, but that's not necessarily a good thing because the air is hot. If the air is hot, it's more prone to pre-ignition. That's why you intercool everything. So, damn, talk about going around my ass and over my shoulder to get to my elbow on this explanation. Holy crap. Anyway, long story short, most of the guys, good Lord, will use a normal intake manifold, and they will have an air-to-air intercooler typically, and will do away with the air-to-water intercooler for the most part. That's the easier way to go about doing it. It's the more traditional way to go about doing it. You take advantage of the better internals and the ease of maneuvering, if you will, for that system in terms of install and everything else. For the guys that do the compound system, which again is not necessarily a bad thing, but for the folks that do a compound system, there's some efficiency loss with that supercharger. And the efficiency loss is that the turbos, although you can spool them up really fast because you got a supercharged engine, you are deadheading that supercharger, and you're going to have a significantly higher discharge. In other words, your manifold temperature is going to be significantly high, which means you've got to run a lot of cooling to keep everything chilled out. So what would be my suggestion? What would I do if I were putting a turbo setup together? I always do away with the positive displacement supercharger and run a system that is the turbos only. That's the most efficient way to go about doing it. I'll give you an example. So the only time that it really works, a compound system works really well at altitude. Like if you're at 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 feet altitude, elevation, not density altitude, but just regular altitude, it works really well in that configuration because a turbo doesn't care. Turbos are the ultimate cheat code. A turbo will make the same manifold pressure as long as it has atmosphere to gather and as long as that wastegate spring stays shut. It will make that manifold pressure. It will make whatever boost. That's why turbo cars at altitude are scary fast, because there's enough air there for them to make all the manifold pressure, and the air's thinner, so they go faster because less wind resistance. So turbos are the ultimate cheat code. That's why I'm saying that it will still feed the supercharger pressurized air, and so it will still make the same manifold pressure for a significantly longer amount of time, or I should say for a significantly higher altitude. It's the only time it really makes sense. Let's see. Checked in with Ashley. Let's see. I think next year I'll be sending my engine to your boy too. My 400 small block. Scatpack saying, I watched your cold air intake video and I have a K&N open filter. I'm going to try to find a Hellcat lower to lower my idle temps or through the roof at the track. Yeah, that's pretty common. I mean, that's the setup that I run, and we've been running that setup forever. Just the Hellcat, the stock Hellcat stuff, either for the NA guys or for the boosted guys. And we're running deep into the nines with the stock stuff. So it's kind of hard to, and with all the testing we've been doing, we're not getting any gains. Haven't seen any gains with all the bolt-ons that we've tried. Going broke on bolt-ons, by the way. Ashley's going, we don't like bracket racing either. No doubt, right? What's fun in having the pedaler let out, we may try to turn it down and try to run 10-0s. I mean, y'all could probably turn the boost down a little bit and just play in the 10-0 class and have fun. Oh, Rick is asking about a cradle lockout. Man, before cradle lockouts were even a thing, we were running mid-9s and didn't have any issues. I mean, wouldn't even have thought about cradle lockouts. Just, I've driven a freaking ton of Hellcats, 9-second Hellcats, never had cradle lockouts, never had an issue. So they're not, I mean, demons don't come with cradle lockouts. Just saying. Chuck saying, too bad John Forrest wouldn't let you drive one of his funny cars. That would be a riot. I would love to do that. Sovereign saying, B blows me away with his knowledge. I don't know, man. Just proves I needed to find a girlfriend at one point in my life. Alden saying, I agree. Most informed chat I've seen in a while. Cool, man. Hopefully I'm kind of giving you guys a little bit of a better understanding of how this stuff works, man. It's Oh, Riff's saying, what is the difference between a bolt-on and a full bolt-on car? FBO car just means you literally can't put anything else on the car you can't modify the car realistically anymore without unbolting, cracking the engine open. So full bolt-on for a Hellcat is debatable because some guys do and do not consider a pulley a bolt-on. But the basic consensus is full bolt-ons would be intake, throttle body, cold air intake, if you want to call it that, headers, mufflers, exhaust systems, tuning, anything like that. What falls outside of full bolt-on would be cams, lifters, push rods, anything internal to the engine. Pulleys for Hellcats, I don't really it's a bit of a gray area because it's technically a bolt-on thing, but you also have to bolt on injectors and you really have to have a tune at that point. So is it really a bolt-on? Well, it's about as much of an extensive bolt-on as you can get, but if you're trying to be cheeky about it, it's a bolt-on. But if you're being like you're trying to be above board and be all, Superman in the American way about it, I don't really consider pulleys bolt-on. At least not for supercharged stuff. But I would still call it a bolt-on if anybody asks me. Actually saying, hell yeah, send the 400 to Jacob. You know it. You will not be disappointed. So what I've got to do, here's the thing. The problem is the thing just keeps running. And it's running good, but dude, Sierra's got blow by. So what I was thinking of was maybe next year, because the thing might need a freshen up by then. Maybe next year, pull the 400, send it to Jacob, have just kind of just freshen up the bottom end, put one of my cams in it, do a roller conversion with a set of RPM heads, RPM air gap, and maybe throw an 800 Edelbrock on top of it, or just rejet the 650, put it back in the truck. It'll pick up about 150 horsepower with that, and just do burnouts for distance with the re-gear and just call it good. Maybe, put a different converter in it. I'd leave the same converter in it. Justin put a pretty decent converter in it. And just let it rip at that point. God, you talk about not wanting to do the work. Y'all want to pull that motor for me? Just don't have time. The thing is, I probably would have already done it if I had just had the time. And the problem with having projects and wanting to do the show and wanting to do all this other stuff is I just end up not having time to do my stuff. In fact, I plan on, after the show tonight, I may kind of reel the show in about 30 minutes. I'm going to start taping off Foxy, and I'm going to go over it again. I'm going to start doing a little bit more cutting of paint and kind of clean that thing up a little bit more. So that's what I'll be doing this evening is cut and paint, baby. But yeah, no, I need to get with Jacob. I just, like I say, he's going to get it eventually. It's going to show up. I just made show up. It might be in the back of the truck, kick it out in the middle of the parking lot and haul ass. Make it run. But no, it'll be a super, there's going to be nothing to it. I mean, real easy build, nothing to it. Cal's asking, what's your opinion of the AAD suspension? I don't, for the LX platform, I don't advocate doing any suspension work to them. They don't need it. So I'll put it to you like this. I've done Spawn and the BMR. I like the BMR trailing arms, but as far as anything else, unless you're building a road race car, it's really not worth it. Or if you really want to get deep into the stand. And you can do that kind of with the stock stuff anyway. Cody's asking, how can you run some good times in the heat and bad DA? Lots of data logging and a lot of trans tuning. make sure you're running fresh gasoline if you're on gasoline, or E85. Just make sure you're running fresh fuel, and make sure you're running. Don't get aggressive with timing. Just let the thing do what it's going to do. Don't try to force the issue. The car is going to run what it's going to run, and I've already proven that. Well, here's the weird thing. My car is not timing sensitive. In fact, my car doesn't really like timing all that much. The only place that I actually have any timing worth mentioning is 2 degrees of timing is at the very bottom of the air charge chart at 5,200 RPM, where the car is just dumping timing. And when the car was running in really good air, you could feel it nose over. And it was nosing over because it was just, there was no timing there. I added the timing in, and the car ran significantly better. But that's the only place that I added timing. In the air that we have now, my car is running on stock timing. And I'm happy to say that it's significantly quicker on stock timing than it has been if I tried to throw timing at it and play around with a tune. And I mean, it's a good thing. And it didn't take me long to figure out that Hellcats didn't like timing. At least my car didn't like timing very much at all. It's a fun problem to have. Let's see. Big Chill is asking, a lot of 1320s being sold, but he hasn't seen any at the track. Why do you think that is? Weird question. I mean, weird, isn't it, that you would question why the 1320s aren't at the track? I don't know. They are probably, in my opinion, a 1320 is the best track car. You get a 1320, put it on a drag pack, it will run a 12.0 at the drag strip, on the street, pretty much anywhere, if not an 11.6 at least, or an 11.7. And they're a lot of fun. They're a great drag strip car, and they're a fun as hell street car. But why you don't see them at the drag strip more often, man, I wish I could tell you, because stock for stock, tire for tire, they're the quickest car on the drag strip. That's stock Camaro, stock Mustang. I just haven't seen one lose, again, stock for stock, both cars being on a drag pack. They're a lot of fun. And one of my fondest memories was a good buddy of mine, Ray, God rest him, but man, what a cool dude, man. Him and I had a ball in his 1320. He had a couple of 1320s. And we spent an entire night last year. It was like November of last year. There was a concert being held at the drag strip. We're like, what the hell is this crap? So anyway, we ended up finding a spot and made hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. Me and him just laughing like a couple of kids, taking turns running that 1320 at stock tire pressure, as delivered tire pressure, trying to beat each other. We had the pages up, and so I would make a hit, and he's like watching the pages. It's like, ran a 12.1, and then he'd run a 12.1, and then I'd run. And this is as delivered, 32 PSI, Nexen drag radials, full weight car, the whole bit. Was a rear seat delete car. But anyway, long story short, I think he had more 12.1s than I did. I was running 12.1, 12.2, but he ended up running, I think he ran like a 12.0 on the way home. But such a fun car, and one of my favorite memories, car-related memories for sure. Let's see. Oop, just screwed this up. Let's see. Chris asking, what are your thoughts on fuel injector cleaner additive and Hellcats? You don't need it. If you're running good quality premium fuel, there is enough detergent in that fuel to keep everything clean. I have never, ever run a fuel injector cleaner in my fuel in the Hellcat. One thing you have to remember, or for anything in recent memory, one thing you have to remember is that, well, think about it like this. Gasoline, some corrosive stuff, but it's still, gasoline has a lot of lubricity to it. It's, as a hydrocarbon, it lubricates by the simple fact of being there. That's why fuel pumps last so long. The the pump mechanism will outlive the motor usually, and that's because it's constantly spinning in a bath of hydrocarbon or gasoline mixed with some ethanol. The reason why you don't need fuel injector cleaner or anything like that is because a percentage of the fuel